Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel English Literature with Sumi. So today's video is our first one of the series of History of English Literature. So in today's video, I will be discussing about the origin of the name Anglo-Saxon and who were actually the Anglo-Saxon people. And in the next videos, I will be discussing about the literature of the Anglo-Saxon period, and then on I will move on to discuss the various period of the English literature, and along with that I will also be discussing the major writers of each of the periods. So if you had not seen my previous video, Objectives and Qualities of Literature, do check it in the description box, the link is given. So as you can see, I have already mentioned at the top of the page that the period Anglo-Saxon or Old English, it ranges from 410 AD to 1066 AD, which is a period of about 600 years, which is a long period in there. So let me first start with the notion that people know very little regarding the origin of English literature. Why is that so? Maybe because there are not enough materials to study about English literature. But in this lecture, I will be dealing with the major writers, although they are not famous as Shakespeare and Chaucer and other writers of English, but they had remarkable works which we need to know in order to better understand the Old English period. So people actually know very little because of such things, that materials are not enough and we don't have an interest in English literature, Old English literature. So I would like to say that it was assumed that a verse of an extemporary speech kind was composed before the earliest prose and poetry were written down. That means people of the Anglo-Saxon period or Old English period, they used to verbally communicate. As they used to verbally communicate with each other, they also used to verbally pass literature from one person to another or from reason to reason. So extemporary kind of literature was prevalent at that time. Now, after reading some of the earliest records, that means if you go through some of the histories of English literature, there are many books on histories of English literature. If you go through that, you will be surprised. Why? Because people who are very brave, that is the Anglo-Saxon people or the warriors who are very brave, we are very surprised because they could write such excellent poetries. If you go through their poems, you will be shocked that they were the same people who used to fight so hard in battlefields. So from this, I would like to relate the objective of literature. Now, literature makes us acquainted better with the dreams and ideals which underlie all their actions. Not only with the history, not only how they used to fight their battles, but also their ideals and destinies. So let us first move on to know from where did the name Anglo-Saxon came into being. From where did it actually originate? So I would like to begin by telling you that there were actually three Germanic tribes. They were Jutes, Angles and Saxons. Now the Jutes, Angles and Saxons, they together were known as the Germanic tribes, and they came from the shores of the North Sea and the Baltic. They left their homes there and they came to conquer Britain. At that point of time, it was a very common thing to invade places. It's a heroic deed for the tribes. So they came from the North Sea and they conquered Britain. Now the question is, was Britain a empty place where there are no inhabitants at that point in Britain? No, there were actually inhabitants in Britain at that time. So the original inhabitants of Britain were known as Britons. They were known as Britons, and from them only the name Britain came into being. Now, after knowing the original inhabitants of Britain, whom the Anglo-Saxons and Jutes they invaded, let us know from where did what meaning does the word Anglo and Saxon have? Saxon word angul or ongul. It usually means a hook, a fishing hook, and so the people belonging to the Anglo tribe, they were usually hookmen. And similarly, the name Saxon, it came from Seax, S-E-A-X, which originally is a sword. So, the people belonging to the Saxon tribe, they were usually swordsmen. So, that is all regarding the meaning of the word Angles and Saxon. Angles are the hookmen and Saxons are the swordmen. Now, let us move on to say how did England, the name England came into being. Now, we are already acquainted that there were three types: Jutes, Angles, and Saxons. Now, the Angles, they were one of the conquering tribes, and Saxons were together with them. But the Jutes, they were very less in number, so they are not usually counted with the Anglo-Saxons. They came with the Anglo-Saxon tribes. They were very less in number, so majority always rules in every field. So Angles, they were one of the conquering tribes, and so from them the new home was known as England. Angles, England. Then it gradually changed into England, and gradually after many years it changed into England. First is England because Angles used to rule over there. Then it came into England. Then it came to be known as England, which we know it as present. Then one important thing happened after 500 years. What was that thing? The Latin writers of the Middle Ages, they began to speak of the inhabitants of Britain as Anglo-Saxons. Angles and Saxons, Anglo-Saxons. That means the Saxons of England. Mind you one thing, there were already sections of the continent present in there. Now it really causes confusion among people that who were the original sections and who were the invaders. So the Latin writers did one thing. They called the sections of England as Anglo-Saxons and the sections of the continent were sections of the continent. They were not given any name. But this is how the name Anglo-Saxon and gradually turned into Anglo-Saxons and the name came into being. So this is the first thing. First part has been completed. That is how the name Anglo-Saxons came into being. Now after knowing from where did the name origin, it is very interesting to know what kind of people were the Anglo-Saxons. So, their life was of constant hardship and struggle against nature and man. They not only used to fight against man in battlefield, but they had to fight against nature as well, because they lived in such situations where nature also used to gulp them up. They were fighters, no doubt, but they had such things that they had to fight through nature, because for their living they had to kill animals in order to eat them, in order to survive. Then they lived in such a place where behind them were gloomy forests inhabited by wild beasts and imaginary creatures like dragons and evil beings, and in front of them was the North Sea. So it was like if they move forward, the North Sea will gulp them up, and if they move backwards or into the forest, of course wild beasts will attack them and will take their lives. So they had to fight both way, with man, with nature, with sea, everything. So that is the main thing in Anglo-Saxon people, that is they had to fight with everything on earth. That means they are warriors. Then the third thing about their features, what kind of stature they used to have, the Anglo-Saxon people. Let me tell you, they were big, not only big in terms of bravery, but they were big in terms of their stature. They were big, they had blonde hair, and they were a powerful race who do not fear anything. But one important thing to note here is that they had an immense love for the sea. Not only the North Sea, but they were usually a lover of sea. which we can find in their poetry. This poetry sections I will be dealing with in my next video. So they were a lover of the sea, which evidence we will find in their poetry, in their prose, and in their stories as well. Now let us move to the fourth point. Now they were a marvelous mixture of savagery and sentiment, rough living and deep feeling. This I have already explained in point number 2, because they used to fight in battlefield, but they had sentiment as well. They had emotions within them. They used to live very hard through their existence, but they also had deep feeling for their fellow beings and their fellow human beings and their relatives, friends, etc. That means they were men of profound emotion, and so they had a great love for their home and homely virtues. It is not that they were savages, so they do not have virtues. That is completely a wrong or mistaken view on the part of a literature student, that the Anglo-Saxons, because they were savages, they do not have virtues. Their regard for virtues can be seen. I will give you one example. That is when they fight very bravely in the battlefield, and after winning, not only winning, after losing as well. They usually don't lose in battlefield, but after coming back from battlefield, they used to go to their homes and live with their family, and they return to their wife after triumph. So let me just sum up this things regarding the people. What kind of people were the Anglo-Saxons? Let me give you 5 basic principles. First is their love for personal freedom. Why they fight in battlefield? Because they do not want to lose their freedom in the hands of other invaders. Secondly, their responsiveness to nature. One example of that is they used to respond to the sea. They used to hear the voice of the sea, and they used to respond to the sea. Then the third is their religion. They are pagans, but their religion is basically their heroes and all that. They used to worship their heroes. Then the reverence for womanhood. As I have already told you, they had a love for their women, and they used to come off the battlefield and come to their wives. Then their struggle for glory. After when they are in battlefield, they had to struggle very hard in order to achieve glory. So these are the 5 basic principles which characterizes the Anglo-Saxon people. So that's all for today. Stay tuned for the next video in where I will discuss about the literature of the Anglo-Saxons, what kind of literature they used to write, and also the major writers of that people. So do not forget to subscribe to my channel for the latest updates.